Hello, today I'll be doing a video on this game that you can see here, Hunt for the Arkenstone, a Middle-earth adventure game. It's based on The Hobbit, I guess. It's, I believe it just came out. I did an unboxing of this on my last video. I didn't really know anything about it, but I'm kind of a sucker for Tolkien type games. I've since read this is maybe based off a previous game called Quest for Mount Doom or something like that. So that was probably based on Lord of the Rings, and this one's based on The Hobbit. Anyway, let me show you how to set up and play. First thing you'll do is place the board in the center of the play area. Players will then determine which member of Thorin's company they're going to be by having one character card dealt randomly to each player. We'll set up for 3 players here, so we got Bomber for this player, Oin the Dwarf for this player, and Glowing the Dwarf for this player. You will have to have assembled the miniatures and maybe paint them if you want to at some point, but each character will have their own miniature. So here's the miniature for Bomber. This is the one for Oin. Again, that's the painted version there on the character card. And here we have Glowing. Each character card has a special rule for their character, like this one: once per round, Bomber may allow an ally to re-roll a single die, and they each have a drawback. So for instance, this one at the start of each round, after the turn order cards have been determined, which we'll talk about later, and any other effects have been applied, Bomber must swap his turn order card with the player going last. So I guess Bomber will always be last. Next, you'll take your item card deck, shuffle that deck, and then place one card underneath each one of these spaces that goes around the board. And each one of these spaces around the board corresponds to a location that's on the map, except for the throne room. And when a character moves into that location, they'll be able to take the item from around the board that corresponds to that location. The items are usually beneficial items for the players. And one of them, of course, is the all-important Arkenstone that the characters will be trying to find. So, as I said, after you shuffle the deck, you just start placing the item cards face down underneath these different locations, going around the board. And I'll get that taken care of off camera and come back when I've filled all the spaces going all around the board. All right, so as you can see, I have the item cards next to their locations going around the board. Next, you'll take your event cards, which is this deck, shuffle them up, and then place them on the event space of the game board. Next, you'll take your location cards that form this deck, and you'll place them on this location of the game board. And these spaces are just for discards for the event deck and the location deck. You'll then take the Azog marker, which is this one, and place it on Weathertop on the game board. Next, you'll take the turn order cards equal to the number of players, so you'll always need a first and a last, and there's the last, there's a last. And then, depending on the number of other players, you'll need that many other cards. So in a 3-player game, you'll need a first, a last, and then a number 2. If you had a 4-player game, you'd have a first, a 2, a 3, and a last. If you had a 5-player game, you'd have a first, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a last, and so forth. So, setting up for a 3-player game, I just need a first, a 2, and a last. The players take their character models and place them on bag end. That's the starting location for the characters. You'll place your dice and your orc tokens somewhere nearby. And with that, we are ready to learn how to play Hunt for the Arkenstone. All right, well, the game is played in rounds. During each round, each player will get to take a turn. The first thing that happens at the beginning of a round is one player will shuffle up the turn sequence cards and deal one to each player. And that will be the order their players will take their turns that round. So in this case, we dealt the first to Gloin, so he'll take the first turn. Number 2 went to Oin, so he'll take the second turn. And Bomber got the last, so he'll take the last turn. And there's also a turn sequence on these cards that tells you what you do on the turn. So the objective of the game is it's a cooperative game. The players will be working together, going to these locations, trying to find the one that contains the Arkenstone, and then if the character that is carrying the Arkenstone manages to get to the throne room, then they win the game. So let's talk about what players can do on their turn so they can try to accomplish this objective. So if we look at this turn sequence card, and we can see the first thing a player will do on their turn is draw a location card. So Glowing is the first player, and the first thing he'll do on his turn is draw a location card off the location deck. So he draws that, and what the location shown there, this one is the Dungeons in Mirkwood, is where you will move the Azog figure. So here is the Dungeons in Mirkwood. You would move the Azog marker there. This is thematically supposed to represent where Azog is focusing his search for Thorin's company. So at this point, because we drew the Dungeons location card, he's focusing his location or his search over here in the Dungeons of Mirkwood. If Azog is ever moved to a location that contains one of the characters, or one of the characters is moved to a location that contains Azog, then that character or characters are captured. I'll talk more about being captured here in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that when at the beginning of every player's turn, they'll draw a location card which will move Azog, if Azog is moved, onto a location that contains a character or characters. Those characters will be captured. And when they're captured by Azog, they'll usually be moved here to the Dungeons space. And again, like I said, we'll talk more about being captured later. But as I mentioned, the first thing you'll do is draw a location card. There is not a location card for bag end, so bag end is always safe. But all the other locations on the board, there is a location card. So it's always possible that Azog could move to your character's location. Now, the discard pile for the location deck is open information. The characters can always look in there. So you know if a location card is in the discard pile, that location is probably or is safe, and Azog won't be moved there. So you'll kind of know what locations are safe to move to. Though, if the location deck becomes empty, then it's reshuffled. And of course, then you don't know what locations are safe again until they're drawn and discarded. But after you've drawn a location card, if Azog is not moved to the location you're at, as we saw here, he was not, then the next thing a player gets to do on their turn is make a move roll. So to do that, they just take one of the dice, roll it, and they can move along these paths you see on the board. Now the number between the paths is the number of movement points that it takes to move to that location. So here we rolled a 2, so Glowing could go 1, and this one's another 1 since he rolled a 2. He could go to Bree, or he could just move 1 and stop in the Shire, or if he didn't want to move at all, I guess he could just not move at all. But so you'll roll a dice, whatever value you get there is your movement value for the turn, and then you move along these paths up to that value. Because he only rolled a 2, he could go to the Shire and then again to Bree, but he wouldn't be able to go from the Shire here to the Blue Mountains because that would take an additional 3 movement points, so he would have had to roll at least a 4 to go from the Shire to the Blue Mountains. But after you move to a location, you then get to take the item card that corresponds to that location. So in this case, Gloin moved to the Shire, so we would look over here for the item card in the Shire, and Gloin would get to take that. This one happens to be Sebastian. This card is always in effect. Add 1 move rolled. Add 1 to move rolls made in a Mirkwood location. And he would get to keep this, and that would be in effect. He would always have, he would get to have add 1 to his move rolls in a Mirkwood locations. So speaking of Mirkwood location, let's talk about the different regions on the board. You can tell those regions by these icons on top of the location. There's 6 regions. The ones with this little acorn, the locations with this little acorn are the Eriador locations, and they have kind of a greenish border around them, as you can see here. Those are Eriador, that's the Eriador region, and those are their locations that have the little acorn. The Mirkwood locations all have this spider up in the top, and they have this white border around them. So there's quite a few Mirkwood locations. So some event cards or items may reference a region, and that when it references a region, it usually counts for every location in that region. We have the Esgaroth region, which has this little fish looking icon. That's over here. It's got Lake Town and Dale, Bard's House, and so forth. The locations with this icon and kind of the red border are the Erebor locations. So there's several of those. And again, I'm not really sure what that icon is supposed to be, but those are the Erebor locations. The wilderness locations have these leaves up at the top. There's a few of those locations. And finally, the Misty Mountain locations have this icon in it. So going back to that item, we got that this card is always in effect. Add 1 move to add 1 to move rolls made in the Mirkwood locations. So whenever Gloin makes a move roll in one of the Mirkwood locations, the ones with the spider, he gets to add 1 to his move roll. And remember, he got that because he moved into the Shire. Now there is a item card for Bag End, but you only get an item card when you've moved into that location. So somebody will have to leave and then come back to Bag End if they want to get that item card in that location. All right, again, to recap, the first thing you'll do on your turn is draw a location card and move Azog to that location. If he moves to a location that contains a character or characters, they will be captured. But the next thing you'll do on your turn, if you're not captured, is make a move roll, and then you can move along the paths to an adjacent location. Now, adjacent locations are those that are connected to your location by a path, and you can only move up to your move value, and the cost to move between locations is shown on the paths, as I mentioned. So it would cost 1 to move here and another 1 to move here, but if you wanted to move here, it would cost 4. So you can keep moving through locations as long as you have enough movement value to spend from your move roll. So of course the next thing after your move roll is to move your character, and then finally the last thing you'll do on your turn is draw an event card. This is Gloin's turn, so he's drawn his location card, he's done his move roll, he moved to the Shire. And now he's going to draw an event. So he'll draw this one, Lost in Mirkwood. The player that drew this card is immediately placed on the Forest Paths location. So Glowing is the one that drew this card, so we would have to move his character to the Forest Paths location, which is right here. Now, whenever you're moved to a location by an event card, you don't get to draw an item from that location. Then you just discard your event card, and that would go to the next player's turn, which in this case would be Owen. Now remember to take into account the abilities of your character. We didn't look at Glowing's, but when Glowing finishes his move on a location, he may choose to take the item card from an adjacent location instead of taking the one from the location he is on. So when he moved here to the Shire, he could have taken the item card from Bag End or Bree or the Blue Mountains, because all of those are adjacent to the location that he is on. So he could have chose to taken one of those instead of the one from the location he is on. So that's his special rule, but he also has this special rule or drawback. Glowing reduces his move roll by 2 to a minimum of 1 when starting his turn in a Misty Mountains location. And remember, that's these locations with this icon. So his move roll will always be reduced by 2 when he's in one of those locations. So that's the basics of a turn. Draw a location card, move Azog, make a move roll, move your character, then draw an event card, then move on to the next player. Let's talk about some more details now. For instance, if Azog does move on to your location and you're captured. So for instance, if Glowing was in Goblin Town and on his turn or another player's turn they drew a location card that was Goblin Town and Azog was moved there, then Glowing would be captured. So when you're captured, you're immediately moved to the dungeons and kind of put in this captured space. When a character is captured and it becomes their turn, they don't draw a location card, they don't get to roll to move, and they don't draw an event card. What they can do is try to roll to escape or roll to break out. So when you're captured, again, and then it becomes your turn, you don't get to draw a location card. You don't get to roll to move. You get to roll to break out. You roll a die. If you get a 6, then you break out and just move into the location where you were at, and your turn ends. But then on your next turn, you'll get to take a regular turn. If you don't roll a 6, then you remain captured. Now, one thing you can do when you're captured, if you roll and fail to break out, you don't roll a 6. You get to take a rest. And when you take a rest, one of the things you can do is some of these event cards will give a player, when they draw it, a lasting effect, something that maybe subtracts 1 from their move roll or doesn't allow them to move into certain locations, something like that. It's a lasting effect that they'll keep that card and they'll always have that hindrance. But when you take a rest, you can get rid of 1. Every time you take a rest, you can get rid of 1 lasting effect cards. If you don't have a lasting effect card when you take a rest, then on your next turn you can re-roll your move roll. Now when you're captured, that doesn't really help you, but there's another time you can take a rest, and that's when you make a move roll and you can't move. And that may happen because, let's just set up an example. Maybe your character is here in the Blue Mountains and you make a move roll and you only roll a 2. Well, so you don't have enough to go back to the Shire, because that would require at least 3 movement points. You can't go up here to the High Fells because that requires 4 movement points. It does give you enough to go to Weathertop, but a character can never move into a location with Azog. I mean, why would you want to? That would make you captured immediately. So the rule is you just can't move into a space that Azog occupies. So if you ever make your move roll and you're unable to move for any reason, such as this, then instead of moving, you can take a rest. So again, as I said, when you take a rest, if you have a lasting effect card, you can discard it. If you don't have one to discard, then on your next turn, when you make a move roll, if you don't like it, you can re-roll it. Now I mentioned characters cannot normally willingly move into a location that contains Azog, but the rules do state that there may be a character with a special rule or an item that allows them to move into the same space as Azog. But otherwise, normally you can't willingly move into a space with Azog, and if Azog moves into your space, well then you're captured and you move to the dungeons. And we just talked about what being captured means. And I did want to clarify about being able to take an item card. You can take an item card when you finish your move in a location. So if you were here and you rolled a 4 and you didn't stop in the Shire and you moved to the Blue Mountains, you don't get to take the item card from the Shire just because you moved through there. You only get to take the item card from the location you stop in. And you can only take an item card from a location that you stop in that you move to voluntarily, so either through your movement or the use of an item. But if you're sent to a location involuntarily, like being sent to the dungeon, you don't get to take the item card from the dungeons, or if an event card moves you to a location, then you were sent there unwillingly and you don't get to take the item in that case either. Let's talk a little bit more about events. As I said, at the end of a player's turn, the last thing he'll do is draw an event card and immediately resolve it. When or if the event deck ever runs out, then you'll just simply reshuffle it like you do with the location deck and form the event deck again. Now, some event cards will place orcs in locations on the board. So let's talk about orcs. So a player may draw an event card like this one. Place an orc token on each Misty Mountains location. So in that case, you will take from your supply of orc tokens and place one on each Misty Mountains location. That's the ones with this icon. We still need a couple more. Alright, I think we put one on each Misty Mountain location. Now, if an event card instructs you to place orc tokens, a location may never have more than 3 orc tokens. So if if an event card would have you try to place a 4th orc token in a location, then you just don't play it. If an event card would have you place orcs and there are no more orc tokens in the supply, then those orcs just won't get placed. If an event card said to place, or like this one, place orcs in each Misty Mountain location, but there were only maybe 3 orc tokens left in the supply, well then you can't place one on each Misty Mountain location, so the player who drew that event card gets to decide where to place the 3 orc tokens that you do have and can be placed. Now, one rule is that orc tokens can never be placed in Bag End and can never be placed in the dungeons location. So even if you drew a card that said place an orc token on each area door location, you would not place one in Bag End, or if you drew one that said place an orc token on each Mirkwood location, even though the dungeons is a Mirkwood location, you would not place an orc token in the dungeons. If a character is moving and they move into a location that contains one or more orcs, they must immediately stop their movement. So if Gloin here was in the Shire and he rolled a 5, even though he only spends 3 of his movement to come here to the Blue Mountains and he has 2 movement left, he has to stop as soon as he enters a location that contains an orc or orcs. When you moved into a location that contains one or more orcs, you have to stop, as I said, and then fight them. So when you fight them, you roll one die for each orc in the location. In this case, we just have one. You'd roll it. On a roll or 4 or better, then you defeat that orc and remove it. If you roll less than a 4, then the orc just stays there. When a character begins their turn in a location with one or more orcs, they still go ahead and draw a location card and move Azog like normal, but instead of making their move roll, they have to try to fight the orc. So in this case, if Gloin was starting his turn here, he would draw a location card, move Azog. Then before he can attempt to make a move roll, he has to try to fight the orcs. In this case, he got a 4. He would defeat this orc, so it would go back to the supply. And then because he defeated the orcs, he gets to go ahead and make a move roll. If there's no more orcs after you fight them at the beginning of your turn, if you've defeated all of them, then you can go ahead and make your move roll and move as normal. If there was more than one orc there and you only defeated one of them and one remains, then you still can't make a move roll. So you wouldn't get to move, and then you just go ahead and have to draw your event card. If you start your turn in a location with orcs and you have to fight them, and say you defeat this orc, so then you go ahead and get to make your move roll, and you move into a location with more orcs, then you have to fight those orcs. And even if you then manage to defeat both of those orcs, because you've already moved, you don't get to roll and move again. You would still just have to stop there. But the orcs being in that location does not prevent you from getting the item card. If you moved into that location, you still get to draw the item card. Besides stopping your movement, the other problem with orcs is at the end of a round, so after every player has taken their turn, any character that is in a location with orcs has to roll a die for each orc in their location, and if they roll a 1, in this case we didn't, we're good. If you roll a 1, then you're immediately captured and moved to the dungeons. As long as you don't roll a 1, then you just stay there, but of course the orcs are there, and you'll have to fight them in your next turn instead of before you can roll movement. And I think that pretty much covers the rules of the game. Now the players lose if at any time all the characters are captured at the same time, then the players lose. But otherwise, if one of the characters manages to find the Arkenstone and manages to get to the throne room with it, then the players win the game. Now, I don't think I mentioned this. If you are carrying the Arkenstone and you get captured, then before you're moved to the dungeons, you have to drop the Arkenstone in the location that you're at. So to do that, you just place it in the slot that corresponds to your location. So if you were carrying the Arkenstone in Dale and you got captured for some reason, either because Azog moved there or because you had orcs in that location at the end of the round and you rolled a 1, that made you captured. Before moving to the dungeons, you would have to place the Arkenstone face up here in the Dale slot. So even if there's another item there, you place it face up on top of there, and if another character manages to move into Dale, then they would get to take both the Arkenstone and the item that's there. But I think that pretty much covers the rules. So I will set back up, kind of reshuffle these decks, and then we'll go through a few example turns. Before we start our example turns, I did forget to talk about one thing about a player being captured. If a player is captured, like we'll say Gloin was captured here, and another player ends their move in a location where the captured player is, they get to roll a die for each captured player there, and on a roll of 4+, that captured player would be freed. Alright, if I forgot anything else, maybe we'll cover it during the example turns. But alright, I think we're set back up how we should be at the beginning of the game. So as I said, the first thing that happens at the beginning of the round, you shuffle up the turn sequence card, deal one to each player. Alright, so Oin got the first, Gloin got the second, and Bomber got the last, which is fitting because remember, at the start of each round after the turn order cards have been determined, any other effects have been applied, Bomber must swap the turn order card with the player going last. So Bomber would always be last anyway. Alright, so Oin is first. So the first thing he does on his turn is draw a location card. So we got the Plains of Erebor, so we will move Azog from Weathertop to the Plains of Erebor, which is over here. Alright, now Gloin will make a move roll, so we'll get a die, roll it. He got a 3. So we'll just say he is going to, let's see, Gloin is this one. He's going to move 1 and then 2 to Bree. He can't move any further, so he's going to stop in Bree. Here's the Bree item card, so he gets to draw that. That is Glamdring, Gandalf's sword. Play this when you fight any number of orc tokens. After the dice have been rolled, you may re-roll any of the dice. Now, this is a play, so once you play it, it's discarded. But until he needs to play that, he'll just keep it here in his area. One other thing I didn't mention is characters that are in the same location can trade items. They can do that before or after they make their move roll. And the way they do that is if it's your turn and you're going to trade an item with another character in your location, you can give them one of your items. Alright? It's not an exchange items, you just can give them one of your, if it's your turn and you're in a location with another player, you can, if you want, give them one of your items. Alright. So Oin has made his move roll and he's moved. He's taken the item from Bree, which is going to help him fight orcs in the future. And now he has to draw an event card. But we'll notice Oin has this ability. Before Oin draws an event card, he may look at the top 2 event cards, place one of them at the bottom of the deck and one at the top of the deck. Oin then draws the card placed on the top of the deck. So he gets to look at the top 2 cards, choose one to put on the bottom, and the other one's the one he's going to get. So this one, for the duration of the round, players that are captured cannot be freed, or place an orc token on each location adjacent to a player. I think we'll put the orc token one at the bottom of the deck, and we'll put this one on the top, which we then draw. So for the duration of the round, players that are captured cannot be freed. Hopefully none of them will be captured, so that will be a non-event. Anyway, alright, so that is going to end Oin's turn. So now we go on to Gloin's turn. Alright, so the first thing Gloin will do is draw a location card. We got the Lonely Mountain. So that is where we will move Azog. And the Lonely Mountain is right here. He didn't move very far. And now Gloin gets to make his move roll. He gets a 5. So we'll have him go... wait, this one's Gloin. He's going to go 1, and then he'll go here to the Blue Mountains for a total of 4. He rolled a 5. So he'll get to take an item from the Blue Mountains, which is going to be right here. Let's see what he got. Play this card at any point during your turn. Move a single orc token to an adjacent location. This cannot be used to move an orc token to a location that already has 3 orc tokens. The Ring of Durin. So he'll just keep that, and he can play that when he wants to on his turn. And now Gloin has to draw an event card. His special, Gloin, has to draw an event card. Now He could have, because of his ability, he could have taken, instead of taking the location card there, he could have taken the one from High Fells or Weathertop or the Shire, because he gets the choice of taking one from an adjacent location instead of just the one he was in. But he took it from the one he was in. All right, he's going to draw his event card. He got, look at the last 3 location cards that were drawn, place 1 orc token on each of them. Well, we've only drawn 2, so we've got to place an orc token on the Lonely Mountains and the Plains of Erebor. So we'll place one there and there, and that will be that event card. And that's going to end Gloin's turn, so now we move on to Bomber. We know that Bomber's drawback is that he always is going to be last, but his special rule is that once per round, Bomber may allow an ally to re-roll a single dice. We need to keep that in mind. But the first thing Bomber's got to do is draw a location card. The Forest Paths, that's where Azog will move to. That is over here in Mirkwood, the Forest Paths right there. Nobody's there, so nobody's captured. Now Bomber gets to roll for his move. He rolled a 3, but he's just going to move 1 and go to the Shire. Characters can share a location, so he could move into Bree if he wanted to, but why skip over an item? So he's going to take this item from the Shire, which is Sauron's Staff. Play this card. At any point during your turn, move any other player to a location they're adjacent to. This may be used to move a captured player, at which point they are no longer captured. So that's pretty good. So he'll just keep that in his play area. And now he has to draw an event card. So he gets the Curse of Misfortune. This is a lasting effect, so he'll keep in his play area. Whenever this player rolls die to move or fight, they must re-roll any 6s. So this is one of those lasting effects that when you take a rest, either because you can't move or because you're in a dungeon and you didn't successfully roll a breakout, you can discard one of those. Alright, but that is going to end the round. Now if anybody was in a location with an orc, we would have to roll to see if they roll a 1, and they would get captured if they did. But at this point we don't have very many orcs out in the board. So now we just collect the turn order cards. We'll shuffle those and deal them out again and start another round. We'll go through one more round and then we'll probably wrap it up. And we'll shuffle up these turn sequence cards. There's not really too much shuffling you can do when there's only 3. And we'll deal 1 to Gloin, 1 to Oin, and 1 to Bomber. He got the first, but remember at the start of each round, after the turn order cards have been determined and any other effects have been applied, Bomber must swap the turn order card with the player going last. So Gloin will actually get to go first, and Bomber will go last. Alright, so we start with Gloin. He's going to draw a location card. He gets the Forge. And that's over here. Old Azog is keeping his search over in this area, which is good for us at this point. Alright, now Gloin gets to make his move roll. He gets a 5. So he has enough. It takes 4 to go to the High Fells, so that's where he's going to go. He only has 1 point left, so he couldn't make it to Gundabad, even if he wanted to. But he probably would want to stop in High Fells. So now he gets to get the item there, which is up here. I don't know if you can see it. It's upside down, but he'll get this item that's in High Fells. It is Fine Wine. Play this card. After you roll a dice, you may re-roll the dice. So that may come in handy at some point. Still haven't found the Arkenstone, but we'll keep looking. Now he has to draw his event card. So let's see what he gets. Lake Town Raid. Place an orc on each Esgaroth location. So that's the region over here with these fish icons. So we've got to place an orc token on each one of these locations. Alright, and now that will go in the discard pile, and that is going to end Gloin's turn. So now we move on to Oin. Oin will now draw a location card. You got the Mountain Pass. So we will move Azog over to the Mountain Pass, which is right here in the Misty Mountains. He still doesn't land on anybody, so that's good. Alright, Oin now gets to roll for his move. He got a 3, and I think he's going to move back to Bag End. No, he's not. Hopefully the Arkenstone's not there. He's going to go ahead and move on to Weathertop. That's going to use 2 of his movement. He has 1 left. He could go to the Troll Shaws. But we don't have the item from Weathertop, so maybe that will be the Arkenstone. We'll find out. No, it's not. It is Gandalf's Staff. Play this card at any point during your turn. Move any other player to a location they're adjacent to. This may be used to move a captured player. So that's kind of like Saruman's Staff, same power. But that's a good one to have, so he'll keep that. Now he's got to draw event cards. Remember, he gets to draw 2 because of his power, and choose 1 to put at the bottom and 1 to keep on the top. So we got Bolg, immediately draw location card. Any players on that location are immediately captured, or until the end of the current round, players may not roll to remove orc tokens. Well, we don't really care about removing orc tokens at that point, so I think we'll put Bolg at the bottom. And we'll put this one on the top, and that's the one we're going to draw. So until the end of the round, players may not roll to remove orc tokens. But that's fine because we don't have anywhere we're at. Anyway, that's going to end Oin's turn. And now we'll go on to Bomber. Alright, Bomber's going to draw a location card. He gets Gollum's Pool. That is just down here. So he still doesn't, Azog still doesn't land on anybody. So we're still safe. And now Bomber's going to get to move, so he's going to roll a die. He gets a 2. Now let's see, Bomber is here. He could go to Bree, but the card is already taken from there. He can't go to the Blue Mountains because he only got a 2. It's a good thing he didn't roll a 6, because remember, he's got this lasting effect where he would have to re-roll any 6. So really, best thing for him to do is go ahead and go on back to Bag End and get the item there. So he'll go back to Bag End. Draw the item there. It's not the Arkenstone. It is Velia, the Ring of Elrond. Play this card at any point during your turn. Move a single orc token to an adjacent location. This cannot be used to move an orc token to a location that already has 3 orcs. Alright, so we'll just put that over here with Saruman's Staff. That would be good to have and use in the future. And now he needs to draw an event card. And he gets Stop. We have to go back. The player that drew this card is immediately placed on Bag End. Well, that doesn't matter to him because that's where he is already. They may draw the item card if it is still there. Well, doesn't matter because it's not still there. We just got it. That would end the round. If we had any orcs in our locations, we would then have to roll to see if we're captured, but we don't. We don't have enough placed out yet. Well, that ends the round, and we would now take up the turn sequence cards, shuffle them, deal them out again, and start a new round. But I think it gives you a good idea of how the game plays. Of course, nobody got captured, and we didn't have to fight any orcs or anything, but I kind of explained how that works in the game rules overview. So, just a brief what do I think about this. It is not really what I was hoping for, I'll say that. When I first, I've only played it one time. I played it by myself solo as 3 characters. I did end up winning, but it took much longer than it should for this style of game. When I first started playing, I just thought, I don't really care for this game. As I played a little longer and started dealing with orcs and all that, it got a little more fun, started enjoying it more. But I had a couple times where I got the Arkenstone got like all the way up here to the Plains of Erebor, and I drew a card that like sent me like all the way back to Bag End or somewhere all the way back over here, which was frustrating. And then, finally get all the way back over here near here again, and another effect sent me all the way back, which just kind of made it frustrating, made the game drag on longer than I think it should have. Um, it's okay. I mean, I don't like the fact that Azog just kind of gets to teleport around Middle Earth while you got to slog your way across Middle Earth to try to get where you're going. Or, you're all the way over here, like I said, and all of a sudden you get a card that throws you back to Bag End. It makes no thematic sense that you would be in the Plains of Erebor and all of a sudden you're teleported back to Bag End. So those kind of things just frustrate me. I think maybe playing with more players, I mean, there's quite a few characters, as you can see, and you can play with all of those characters. I think it says up to 15 or 16 players. So I think if you're playing with more than three, then maybe it's probably a little more fun because you have quicker searching, more people searching, find the Arkenstone a little quicker, more more players dealing with the orcs because once a lot of orcs get out here, it really slows you down because you got to try to fight, and if you don't defeat everyone, then you can't move, and so you're just stuck. And of course, when you're captured, if somebody doesn't have a card to free you, then you're just stuck there trying to roll a 6, which is kind of frustrating when you just sit there turn after turn after turn, and all you can do on your turn is try to roll a 6. So I don't know. Like I said, it may be better with more than three players, but for me, this one was not as good as I had hoped. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.